Good afternoon and welcome to a virtual Corkin Gallery online exhibition. I'm Jane Corkin and we are bringing you today an exhibition called Precious Hopes with 4 establishing artists. We're very excited about our program of establishing artists. This Precious Hopes was put together by Magdalena Arellano, who's from Colombia, and she is our exhibition coordinator and director of programming here. The 4 artists that are with us today are Virgil Baruchel, who is living in London. He's a self-taught artist who was born in Paris of Egyptian heritage and a Moroccan heritage, and now is working in London. He is Parisian born and is a Canadian. We also have today Hana Elmasry. Hana was born in Egypt and is a Canadian working. She is a recent grad of both OCAD and University of Toronto. We also with us today is Chiu. Jeff is a recent grad a couple of years ago from Ryerson University. He's a Canadian who was born here and whose parents were born and came from China. And finally, I think we are also welcoming here today Neil Maguire. Neil has a recent grad from OCAD, and we are pretty excited that all of you have some kind of threads in common in terms of how you think about art and how you make art, although the art you make is all very different. I'm particularly excited to welcome Magdalena Arellano, who has been with the gallery for 3 years. And I think I'd like to ask you, Magdalena, to really begin and talk to the artists this morning.
Hello, everybody, and I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you for being part of the Precious Hopes online exhibition. And I would like to tell you where the idea came from and how the title came to my mind and what does it mean to me to put you together in this talk. The title came from a book called Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I was reading about that the last thing that we can lose is hope, because if we give our hopes out, then it's nothing that it can maintain our spirits alive, basically. And I strongly believe in that as a part of a society that is super consume driven right now. And I think everybody of you, in a way, thinking about identity and being themselves in this moment in life. And basically, that is what the title came from. And I believe in the originality of each of you as an artist. And I would like to start the conversation around that.
So Virgil, tell us about, now that you understand Magdalena's idea, and tell us about your art and what those ideas mean to you, or really what art making means to you. Why do you make it?
Well, personally, I've always made the things that I wanted to see, things that I wasn't seeing maybe, or things that I was inspired by other things and I would just want to be a part of it. And for me, it's always kind of the idea of people living with art is always interesting to me. And it doesn't have to be, it can be art that they make, it could be the art that your friends make, it could be the art that you buy, it could be things that you find that remind you of art, so then it becomes art. But that's kind of where it all stems from. It's just wanting to create and wanting to see my ideas in 2D or 3D outside of my head. And sometimes it's the idea doesn't exist until it's outside of my head. So it's a way of thinking.
Hana, will you tell us about tell us about where your art is coming from, why you're making it, what you're thinking about.
I'm going to push off what Virgil said because I kind of want to continue that conversation. It's really, I think we're all trying to somewhat communicate what we don't see outwardly, but what we feel. And there's like a certain engagement and reciprocation between that, like ourselves and like the arena that we play in, this like agent arena relationship of like having agency and observing things and figuring out how to write it. I think that like painting somehow sometimes is kind of like a formula or a really nicely written novel. Like there's the prose to it is just a different kind of language and a different format. So sometimes if I'm like writing if A, then B, QED, whatever, when I'm painting, it's kind of that play of relationships and premises and all of these things coming together and me writing something out for myself and investigating that experience of like myself and as an experiential figure in like the world and like my worldview and things. I don't know, there's just so many variables, so I couldn't really say why I paint or what comes out of me when I paint or what do I look for or what I'm inspired by. It's really just connecting to something, getting into this flow, finding source and finding myself and just finding the painting at the end of it all. And I have to tell myself when to stop sometimes because you can just keep adding more layers and the painting can change organically with you, like a flower or a plant kind of blossoming and coming down and doing leaves. There's just so many cycles and transitions. And at one point you're like, okay, this is encompassing all of that I want it to for now. I should just like, I might leave it and come back. I have one canvas that I just play with all of the time and see how it transforms with me. But like with painting specifically, it's either that or I have a theory that I've been studying or investigating and I want to see that propagated through color and shape and line.
So you're both talking about a similar thing. You're talking about your gut, aren't you, in a certain way? Neil, do you want to make a comment also, please, about your practice and how you're thinking about all the various things that you apply to your canvases, how you find them, what you find, why you incorporate all those objects?
Yeah, so I think, using the gut, like intuition and just in the process of making, having all of the materials that I need around me and understanding what I have and how it works and how it can be applied in a certain way, I think helps a lot in a sense, like when I'm in the middle of making, I can reach over and grab a thing or I can dig through my collection of things that I have and that gut feeling of like, okay, this will work in this spot, let's just try. And also like I might think it will work and like Hannah said, sometimes you just have to keep playing around because it might not work. And so that's how layers start to build up and things start to transform. And again, it's just listening to yourself and like trying to understand what is coming out of you onto the canvas and trying to understand it and moving with it instead of like trying to work against it, like seeing it, really trying to understand it and just keep applying and pushing it forward. And that can be with one painting, multiple paintings. Like I think it's just important to really just keep making things, and that can help with that understanding of what's going on in the paintings and even within, like how the more things you make, the easier it will become to understand why you make things and what it's all about. So yeah.
So talk about, I mean, we just mentioned a bit about those things. You say how you apply. You apply a lot of different kind of disparate objects. How do you find them? Where do you find them?
Well,
what does it mean to you do you collect them and do you collect objects and have a pile of them in your studio or?
Yeah, so I have like a few been like, especially in thesis, it really started during thesis year because at OCAD, there's just like crap laying around all over the place. So it was really easy to just pick stuff up and place it in my studio, and eventually got to the point, yeah, I had to start putting it in bins, and a lot of it is paper. And sometimes like my walk to and from school I was always going through alleyways. So there's always stuff in alleyways that I could pick up and see how it would look on a canvas, or just like texture base, because of the texture, because of the color of the paper, like, you know, they all carry some sort of narrative and story. And by applying it to a canvas, then like that narrative is continued in not only with the object, but in the way that I've used it. Now the story begins anew, afresh, but it's also a new story as well. So yeah, I think.
And it is indeed something new. Something new is born, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey, your work is both installation and individual. Will you talk about your practice a bit and how you came to it?
I want to avoid repeating a lot of the things that have already been said. I think we share that kind of practice, and I think a lot of it's like instinctual for me as well. And the way I came to kind of installation just from the work taking me there. I didn't really intend to do installation, but I think the material that I was working with.
So can I ask you, Jeffrey, I mean, these beautiful little drawings that I kind of feel like tracings, and it's hard to really understand from looking at it exactly what it is, but it has an element of tracing in it, and it
Right.
has an element of family history. Can you talk about the drawings?
Sure. The drawings, they came about after the initial project, which was the first part of the project, which involved the memoir, my grandfather's memoir, which I couldn't read because I'm just not literate in Chinese. So I wasn't able to engage with it by reading it. So I guess the natural like next step was, I thought I could engage with it in a formal way. I thought I could repeat the action of writing it. So that came about. And then carbon paper came about after I was looking for material that would allow me to have more, I guess, contact with the material, meaning the images and the text. So the carbon paper allowed me to, I guess, be more instinctual in tracing it and drawing it, and the images came about after a process of just mining his own personal archive and
Thank you. Virgil, I'm interested in your weaving. After you made these beautiful little pastel drawings that really harken, it seems, through all of 20th century art history. Now your the most current work are weavings. Talk about the progression, please, from the pastels to the weaving, and what that's about. Like, why are you weaving? What is that about?
I don't have the best answer for why I'm weaving aside from I really, really, really wanted to. And it was something that I had thought of for a long time. I looked at a lot of artist work, and some of them would make rugs, and it always bothered me that they were not the ones making them, and they were having other people make it for them. And that's just like a little something that I was like, you know, if I was I would want to just do it. I want to be there with the material. And what I've been learning from that is it's very different from how I paint, because you have to have a bit of a plan, because you start at the bottom and you make your way up. There's no something in this corner and something there, and then you kind of like make it all work together. It's like you're at the bottom, and so you have to kind of have an idea. And then as you go along, you kind of start to get a little bit maybe bored of the idea that you started with, because it's a pretty arduous process. And so you have to make these decisions like, okay, how can I spice things up? How can I feel like it needs to do something different here, but it's really scary because I've already worked for like 60 hours on this thing. And obviously you can always go back, but it's a lot of work in that way. So I love to change the way that I make things. I've made paintings, I've made sculptures, I've made some work with dancers, and some kinetic work. So all of these different things, and it always seems like there's a point where I just have to try something new, and then it always kind of just comes together. It comes back full circle. I was born in France. My parents were born in the countries that they were born in, but they were brought to France or elsewhere, and so they were kind of they were this thing, I guess, that is maybe a part of my history. Maybe it isn't even a part of my history. It's kind of like I'm in exile from it, and I'm just been really enjoying getting back in touch with it, I guess. Or maybe it was never something that anyone in my ancestry ever did. I don't know, but it feels like it feels great doing it. It's meditative, it's slow, and that's part of it too. It's really slow, and so I can't make a lot of them, and I kind of enjoy that because I think we have too much stuff in general, and so it's less stuff, and that's one of the things that I think I struggle with the most as a maker, is that I'm aware of how much stuff we already have, and here I am wanting to make more of it. So this kind of slows down the pace a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Is it slowing it down? Are you finding it's everything is slowed down now?
Yeah, it definitely
For
works
all of us.
in the pace of today. Yeah.
Hana, the work, the latest work, has a somewhat self-portrait of you with other icons and symbols. The previous work was really more abstract, so this is a progression. This is a different kind of work for you, isn't it? You want to talk about the meaning of your portrait surrounding by these kinds of symbols?
I didn't have an intention to paint my portrait, and after I did, I realized that, I don't know, I skewed around with it so that it wouldn't look like me, and I changed the nose bridge, but I guess I didn't do enough. So I don't know if it is essentially me or just the idea of how a human kind of functions in the world. And like I was saying earlier with my work, I just was looking at different portals and how different sets of knowledge and, like these qualities of qualitative knowledge that you can't quantify, and how you may, I don't know, symbolize that or put those together in the text that I read. And can I put the shape of the text up, and what's the relationship? I don't know, I think my picture or my painting is, I guess people will say it's a progression because they haven't seen figure work in my work before, but I started with figures when I was a kid. So like I taught myself how to paint, and then I decided at university that I would go to an art school to see if I was like on the right track and doing everything well. And during that time, I kind of fell in love with abstract painting. So I left figures because I already had known what to do with them and how to transfer their shape and capture light and blah, blah, blah. So with abstract things, you could really play with space and how 2D space functions in a 3D world, and how 3D people see in a 2D format. So like, I don't know, I got really excited with like depth and stuff. And like I said, these portals. So I guess I accidentally ended up painting me, thinking of how maybe I function within these things, because it's, you know, you can't speak for everybody when you're painting. You can only really speak for yourself and from yourself. So yeah, it was an accident.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wondered if that, yeah, thank you. Neil, you use a lot of comics and refer to video games a lot in your work, which is really fun and exciting, and makes me think about your generation in a different way. Do you want to talk about the use of that and really talk about really the use of 3D, because you're often presenting us a 3D object on 2D.
Yeah, so comics were, I think it's just a quick and easy way to put like a finished image onto a surface. You know, it's like I flip through my comics and like, okay, this will look good. This will fit the theme of what I'm going. And so video games, I think, is where that kind of narrative atmosphere, though those kind of inspirations come from. And then the comics, the images that are found within comics, that the ones that I like anyways and collect, those can then help tell that story, tell that narrative that I'm trying to portray. And then with building up layers and texture and like glazes of color and stuff, that helps build that narrative of well, specifically the games that I like to play are kind of more like dark and moody and adventure games. So there's that narrative of like a beginning and an end, but also all the stuff in between of like finding your way and like dark, scary things and monsters and just like fun stuff. Like it doesn't always have to have this big overarching theme of like an adventure and always moving forward or anything like that. Like there's like video games are tons of fun, and there's just exploration and things like that.
You like scary things? You watch scary movies?
Don't actually, but just the kinds of things that I'm drawn towards tend to, you know, like Batman is like, I guess, like a dark brooding character, but it's mostly just the imagery, like I don't necessarily care too much for like those kinds of stories necessarily, but like the imagery and the atmosphere of kind of like that like dark ages, like medieval times, like swords and shields and stuff like that. Like I guess yeah, I don't consider I don't like scary movies, or I don't like horror or anything like that, but
you like fun. It seems like your work is filled with fun to me.
Yeah, and like that sense of adventure and playing with materials and playing with colors and seeing where they can take me and take a painting.
Thank you. I have a question for all of you. If you had one thought to leave our audience with, for each of you, what would that thought be? Like, how would you like them to think about your work or to explore your work? Or what would be the window for someone who is a potential collector and who is someone who's thinking about your work? What would be that one thing that you would like them to think about? And I ask each of you that. Who would like to start? Nobody. Magdalena, Magdalena, while everyone's thinking, what would you think if you wanted to leave the audience with a thought about Precious Hopes, which I think is which is in a very exciting exhibition of 4 wonderful artists who each are working from different cities with different backgrounds, but in the end are contemporary artists in a very vibrant way. How would you want to leave the audience, Magdalena, to think about what kind of thought?
I will invite the audience to visit the website of the gallery to see the artwork the artists produce and made for the exhibition. Most of the artwork was made during the pandemic, at the exception of Jeff, that was made 2 years ago. But I would like to know the artists, how they feel right now with this current situation and how for them creating art has changed or not.
Just to answer like both of those questions, I think when I have an audience member gazing at my or looking at my work or investigating it, I invite them to, you know, pursue knowledge without projection. So a lot of people, which is hard because we all tie things to ourselves and we can only form claims and beliefs depending on our capacity and where we are. But I kind of ask people to like let go of everything and really look at what they're looking at and how everything connects, or even if it doesn't connect, like literally if it's just pink is a nice color, then pink is a nice color, and like, but what does that evoke in you? Like, I think people don't spend enough time anymore, and I don't either. Like, I can't watch a Netflix TV show anymore because like, I don't know, Vines and TikToks and Reels are all like 30 seconds long. So I can't, and sometimes I don't even want the 30-second reel. I want the 15 one because like everything is just so fast and I got frustrated with that. So with the pandemic happening, I was able to allow myself to slow down and really live with myself and be okay with that. I don't know, I guess I'm not articulating it well, but I hate time. I hate deadlines. I hate the idea of it and how we've just like, I don't know, made it exist. So with this, we were able to kind of like push back from all of that chaos and sit with a different kind of chaos, but sit nonetheless. So that's how.
Yeah, no, I think it's the one wonderful silver lining in the pandemic is that we have all been able to slow down and think about our lives and our existence, perhaps in a less frantic and more thoughtful way. And I think that a lot of people are experiencing that. So thank you for that. That is really a good thought. I think that everybody in all parts of life are thinking about in our society. Anyone else having a thought to leave the audience with?
I'll go.
Okay, Virgil.
What I'm showing in this group show is a curtain, and what I've enjoyed while making it and thinking about it is the fact that though it is a curtain, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you have to walk through it. It means that you can. It means that you can do it with care. It means that you can use it as a separation, but also as a way to welcome people in. And so it's kind of, and if you do use it, you can try and put it back how it was. And to me, obviously in the gallery setting, this isn't necessarily going to happen, but to me with the work that I make, I think it can always be multiple things, and it can always be seen in multiple ways, and it can be used in multiple ways. It can be used as the different ways that it makes you think about things. And so enjoy it, fall in love with it if you can.
Thank you. We've already fallen in love with it. Who else would like to? Neil, Jeffrey? Jeffrey, are you on? I want to say one thing about Jeffrey. When you did the installation, after you found the notebook, when your grandfather died and you found his notebook that you couldn't read, that was all written in Chinese. I was fascinated by how you translated that Chinese into some kind of current ideas that resonated for you. That was really meaningful to me enormously and meaningful, I think, to a great many people who are either first or second or even third generation in North America who come here and whose experiences change over the generations. And that was particularly meaningful. And then the drawings that happened subsequently, when you can see the Chinese photograph translated into a contemporary drawing that's meaningful to you in your life as a young Canadian man who's a recent graduate of university. So I think to see that body of work within that context is very much talking about an experience which is not dissimilar to so many people. And so I wanted to know if you had a thought about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, it's such a common, I guess, situation for so many, I guess, sons and daughters of immigrants who are able to engage with their parents' language and verbally, but they're not literate in the language. So I guess their relationship with their parents' language and culture is, I guess, in a way, I guess, shifted or a little different, a little.
Yeah, a little different. Thank you. Neil, do you have a thought? Leave us with a thought.
Well, yeah, so I guess in regards to the work that is being shown in this show, I think it's easy to get everything you need from it at a quick glance, perhaps, like that small one just behind Magdalena. They were quick paintings and they were things that I just wanted to try out, but then through like spending some time with them and trying to figure out, you know, and I think what's important is that it could be different for everyone. Like when you spend the time with them, like what are they saying? Like what kind of space is it trying to portray, and how, yeah, like what is the narrative that is being told with those works? Like, and it's not necessarily something that I know the answer to, but I think that can be said for a lot of my work is like, it's open to interpretation by anyone, and anyone's answer is the right answer as long as they've like, it's the right answer regardless.
Great. And I think for all of you, the work is open to interpretation because I think all of it has a great deal of different kinds of meanings for each and every person. And those meanings can be very different.
Yeah.
Magdalena, would you like to say one thing about the Precious Hopes?
I want to ask a question to Neil in regards the work that is here. Neil, you were talking about influences and where your spectrum visual came from and how you integrate elements in the painting. Do you consider your painting as a collage, or how do you think about your painting?
I definitely think like it is a painting, like it is a painting, but there's obviously collage elements, and I don't like the collaging isn't the final image. It's like a means to an end sort of thing. Like it helps with the texture, it helps with the storytelling, and in the end, like, yeah, it's a painting, it's not a collage, but I use a lot of collaging, I guess. But yeah.
I wanted to thank you all for being here from different parts of the city or from the continent or from overseas. And thank our viewers for tuning in. You can see this exhibition both online, and you can come and see the exhibition in person at Corkin Gallery in the Distillery District. We'd like to thank Art Toronto for providing the platform for Neil, Jeffrey, Virgil, and Hana to be presented by Magdalena, and for this exhibition to be presented to you. Thank you all.